do this little booth form, so I'm going to go ahead and do that. And I decided I need to have something that would really help out along with videos and different things that will spark children's interest in rocketry, math, and STEM studies. I decided to go ahead and purchase this see-through rocket from Apogee Components called the Vapor. Really neat rocket. Comes with a fantastic poster of the said rocket with all the different parts labeled. Really nice. I'm keeping this rolled up and safe until I have a chance to mount it on a hardboard. The rocket's a really easy looking build, other than the fact that it's got see-through plastic body tube, see-through motor mount. We are using plywood fins and our centering rings are plywood. Standard little cardboard ring motor blocks. We have our Kevlar cord, paper launch lug. Apogee likes to use a paper launch lug. Some really great vinyl decals that we can stick on the body tube, the nose cone shoulder, launch lug, fin tabs, all that different parts that we can label all the different parts of the rocket with, which are really cool. Centering ring, so we can label the centering ring on the inside. People can see, hey, that's the centering ring. Really, really cool, well thought out rocket. Plastic nose cone. I'm not going to sand it. I'm just going to leave everything as is. The only thing they do suggest is, because it is cut by the laser, and lasers don't cut clear things too well, is you have to do a lot of cleanup around this area where the laser cut through. I just used an emery board. You can take a piece of sandpaper and tape it to a popsicle stick and achieve the same thing, and just kind of clean up all your edges and make it look really, really pretty. I am going to be sanding and sealing the fins with some sanding sealer and work on it that way. So we're going to be doing this build, and we'll get started right now. So as with all my other builds, I have my little tote for all the small parts to go into. Nose cone, shock cord, stuff like that. And remember, always save your plastic bag that the rocket came in, because CA glue does not stick to this as readily as it does the countertop or your workbench, your wife or your mom's table. Very, very important. So our first step is we're going to be sanding down all these fins nice and smooth, and I am going to seal coat them with some poly just to make them look nice and pretty, and it'll also hold the stickers in place, the decals. Once I sand them, put the decals on, then I'll spray them down and get them nice and sealed up really good, and it'll keep them from peeling off. So recommended for the build, they have regular white glue. They recommend medium CA glue and fast set for the CA glue, modeling glue, 400 grit sandpaper. Obviously you need an X-Acto. Remember, always a fresh blade. Every time you open up a new rocket kit, go to a fresh blade. Something to mark things with, pencil. Obviously he's not going to mark the clear plastic tubes too well. A fine tip marker would do that. I always keep some tongue depressors and popsicle sticks around. I also have Q-tips. These things are great for applying glue up inside of tubes, way up where you can't reach. And it's a little bit better than just the wooden dowel aspect, because that'll hold the glue better and you can smooth it around a little bit better with a Q-tip. So I always keep those around. Now, our first steps, of course, sand all the fins and everything with 400 grit sandpaper. And now those are getting cured from the coat of sealer that I put on them. They want you to mark the motor mount tube 2 1/4 inches up, which is basically going to give you the spacing for your motor hook. What I did is I measured my 2 1/4 inches, and while holding everything there, because I don't want markings all over my tubes, I just lightly scratched it with the tip of an X-Acto knife. Then I pulled it off and I actually did my cut. So now I'm going to get all the other pieces together and we'll glue that up. So we've got all the pieces we need. We need the motor tube, our engine hook, and the motor stop ring, the X-Acto knife, some white glue, and again I'm using a Q-tip. So we did our little scratch at 2 1/4, and then I stuck the X-Acto knife back in. I kind of give it a little wiggle back and forth. What I'm trying to do is widen that hole by going back and forth just a little bit, because this is plastic versus paper. It's not as easy to stick that engine hook through there. And then we're going to wiggle that in there and it pops right in. Safety first always when handling your X-Acto knife. The best way to put the cover back on is to scoop the cover up and then grab it from the base and pull it on. That way you don't cut your fingers. Now it says to take and tape that in place as it is. So I'm going to eyeball it straight. And then we're going to tape it in place. To make your tape easier to pull off your roll or off an object, I always fold over the end so it gives a little tap. So that looks pretty straight. So now we're supposed to take and smear some glue around the inside where the ring would go, and then we'll insert the ring. Remember, dry fit first, make sure it's going to go in there, and it will go in there. I've got a long rod here that I can use to shove it in to make sure it goes all the way in. You can also use the end of your Q-tip or whatever and just make sure you seat it all the way around. If you have an old motor that's long enough, that might work too. I like using the rod. Just it works a lot better to shove it up in there. All right, so now we're going to dip in our glue. Got a nice amount of glue on there. I want to work it to the end of the Q-tip. I don't need it all over, just on the end. Pouring it in a cup would work a little bit better. And then we're going to just do a little smear all the way around. And this rocket's never going to fly, so I'm not worried about getting strength. This is just to hold it in place. And then we're going to take and we're going to push it up there. I'm going to seat it on the side where the engine hook is. Okay, now it's tapped up in there. And we're going to sit here and let this dry thoroughly before we go on to our next step. This is plastic, so that glue is not going to dry real super quick like it would on our wood or paper rockets. So we want to make sure that dries in there really good. And I'm going to look to see if it's straight. And it looks fairly straight. You can clean up that glue on the inside if you want, just by taking a skewer or a stick and lightly smear it around a little bit. It's glue, so it will clear. It will dry clear. You'll be able to see a little bit of a smear in there, but that's about all you'll see. But you can get most of it off just by doing that. You could take another Q-tip and shove it down in the hole and get the glue out that way also. So we're going to let this dry and then we'll move on to our next step. So our next step, we're going to set up our one centering ring that's going to go over the motor mount hook. So we need to cut out the little tab they have in there with our X-Acto knife, and then I take a piece of sandpaper on a popsicle stick. I folded it over the edge so I have a small edge to sand with too, and I'm going to sand a little bit to make sure that that's going to fit nicely. If there's any rough edges, because this is a see-through rocket, I want to make sure that all the rough edges are gone. Then we're going to do a real quick dry fit to see how well it's going to sit over that. It slides over the tube quite nicely. It slides down that really well. While we're at it dry fitting, let's make sure our other tube will fit on, and it does. So we've got good fit on both of them. So we're going to be removing the tape, and we're going to be putting this a ½ inch from the edge. So we're going to go ahead and pop our tape off. And we want to be a ½ inch from the edge. So that's going to be, I'm going to try and do this as lightly as I can. I don't know if this is going to mark on the plastic or not. So we want to be a ½ inch from the edge. That would be right about there. And it does barely mark. Just come over here a little bit and do the same thing. Another little mark. And then one more right next to the engine hook. There we go. So that's where I want to put my ring. Now we're using CA, so I can actually place it first and make sure that I'm centered exactly the way I want to be all the way around. And I've got take a look. That is a little bit more than I want there. Good there. There we go. Now I can rotate it with my hand and look to see how it looks. I'm not seeing any wobble or anything like that. Now I can take my CA glue and I can open it first. So let me get my CA glue open, we'll get right. Alright, so we've got our CA glue open now. I've double checked to make sure that this is set up a 1/2 inch all the way around. And I'm just going to go on the inside. I'm just going to touch a little bit of glue. Kind of make a little bit of a glue bead. And this is medium. So it's not super watery, it's not super thick. This is medium. I'm trying to be as neat as I can. I'm going to go all the way around just like we would if it was white glue, except we're actually not sliding it over the glue. Okay. Now I can take my accelerator, or my kicker, and I can just touch a drop of it on, and it's going to go all the way around. It's going to accelerate the drying of that glue. So now that super glue, or CA glue, is dry. I can do the same thing to the other side. Squeeze a small bead all the way around like we do with all our fins and everything else. And we'll add a drop of kicker. And again, this rocket, it's all about looks, not strength. Okay, and always keep an extra rag around to wipe up any stray smears you may get from glue or CA or anything else. Okay. So now our next step is going to be attaching the shock cord to the motor mount tube, and then we're going to be sliding this ring over the shock cord and the motor mount tube. So again, we're going to have to cut out the little notch on this so that it can slide over that, and then we're going to super glue or white glue. Super glue makes Kevlar brittle. I could do super or white glue since this actually isn't going to fly. I can glue the ring, the knot, right up against the ring. So we're going to go ahead and prep our ring, and then we'll get ready to attach it. Alright, so we've got the shock cord tied on, and I use just a regular square knot. I can tighten that knot up a little bit more. I can turn around, and I can also throw a 1/2 inch on top of it to tighten it up. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and put some glue on it, tighten it up, and throw that 1/2 inch, then that'll cinch it down tight. Thread our shock cord through, and you can see the little notch there that we made for it right there. That's for the shock cord goes through that. And what's nice is plastic tube is a little bit more forgiving than paper tube for crunching it a little bit. And we're going to pull that through. Now we want this to be right up close to the top like we normally do with most of our shock cord mounts and motor ring mounts. So I'm going to kind of center that. I'm looking at it. I'm going to roll it. And I don't see the ring making a wobble motion, so that means it's centered. So we're going to go ahead and cement that in place. And then I will be cementing the shock cord in place after we get this done. So again, one more check. Let's make sure it's straight and square. Not doing any funny rolls. This cord out of the way. So there's a little bit of a wobble there. Let's straighten that out. There we go. So now we're just going to apply a light bead. CA all the way around. And I'm going to kind of get close, but I'm not going to touch the shock cord. Again, CA can make Kevlar get kind of brittle. Okay. Now I'll give it a drop of kicker. And that went all the way around perfectly. So now that's set in place. Instantly cures it. So last check, looked pretty good. A little bit of a wiggle there now, but that's okay. So now I can pull this all up there. I can cut off the excess of the shock cord. These are bandage type scissors, paramedic scissors. They'll cut through a penny. You can cut through a nickel with them. So push this all up against that motor mount ring. And we can go CA or white glue. I'm going to go ahead and do CA just because it's not going to be flying. So we'll put a drop of CA glue right there on the knot. Thin would probably work a little bit better than thick. So let's go ahead and use the thin here. Just a little drop. There we go. And it actually almost dries instantly when it hits the CA. And it feels really firm and stable. So I'm not going to worry about doing a bead around the inside. I just want to make sure that that knot doesn't untie itself over time. So it's nice and tight now. It's not going anywhere. All right, so we've got this assembly together. Now we need to label the parts. You can see that these great vinyl stickers, motor mount tube, we have the engine block here, we have the engine hook one here. It also has a centering ring sticker for both centering rings. So the problem with vinyl is if there's any dust or any oil on your fingers, it's going to show on the decal. So what I do is I use a pair of tweezers and I just fold it over until I get a corner to pop up. Once that corner pops up, I can peel it with the tweezers. I've never touched the sticky surface. And now we just put it where we want it. It's not quite straight. Once we've got it where we want it, we tap it down lightly and then smooth it out. So now we've got all our pieces marked here. On to the next step, we're going to be sanding the rings, and we're going to dry fit to make sure that it fits in the body tube right. So we've got our fin slots here. Obviously, that's the way we want to make sure it goes. The old trick of pass the shock cord through the motor again. So we feed it through to get it out of the way. So now we're going to see if this will fit without any sanding. And it's a little tight. Yeah, it's a little bit too tight. So we're going to sand the rings, and we're going to make sure that the rings will fit in there. All right, so we've sanded the motor rings, centering rings down so they'll slide in the tube without too much difficulty. Big thing here. Now's the time to take a microcloth fiber and wipe everything down that has dust on it that you won't be able to reach once the rocket's assembled. I can get into the tube and clean out the tube, but I won't be able to clean out this part of the tube. So we're going to wipe it down. We're going to wipe off the centering rings. We're going to make sure there's no dust on any of this equipment here. Because again, I can clean inside the tube, but I can't clean this part of the tube once it's assembled. Same thing with the main body. Wipe down all the interior parts. Now again, this rocket is never going to fly, so I don't have to worry about strength and doing all the glue fillets that we would do on our other rockets. We're going to slide this in, kind of center my engine hook here, and then I'm just going to flex the tube just a little bit to get it to fit. And then we're going to get that flush. So that's flush. And now I can take and I can put my B to CA glue around here to cement it in place, and then we'll hit it with the accelerator and cure it instantly. And again, we can get away with this because this isn't a flight-worthy rocket. This is just purely for demonstration, fun, showing the kids what a rocket looks like and all the different parts of an assembled rocket. We want it to look nice and pretty, but we don't have to have the strength. So now we'll put in the drop the accelerator. I'll let that roll around. Let that roll around. Okay, I think one more drop. Got it. Yeah. Okay. So again, I'm not going to do a fillet up here. I don't need it. This rocket's never going to fly. Let it dry for a few seconds, then we'll take and we'll wipe out the excess of the accelerator that's in there. Remember, accelerator is kind of oily, so you don't want to have it all over everything. It can hinder anything else drying to the plastic or body tube or whatever. So one thing I did check when I did my first dry fit is I made sure that the fins were not going to be hitting the ring and interfering with the ring. I could have pushed it up a little bit closer to where the root edge would be touching the bottom of the ring, but I didn't do that. I'm going to leave just a little bit of gap there. So our next step is going to be to finish sanding the fins and getting the clear coat fully cured on them. And then we're going to put the fin tab stickers here. And then we'll be inserting them into the rocket. And again, they're not really going to touch the body, the motor mount tube, so we're not going to be able to do the same thing. It's going to be a little bit more difficult, but we're going to have to hold it and just do a dot of glue to tack it in place, straight up and down. And then we'll set it with the rapid set, and then we'll turn around and do the next fin the same way. And we'll get all the fins in there that way. So I've got the first two fins in. I'm going to show you how we do the last fin. I've got my little blocks. I love these blocks. I made them just by taking a 2x4, using a dado bit to cut a track in it, and then felt covering them with some felt cloth. Great for not scratching up paint jobs, holding rockets still while you're working on them. So we already tested and did our dry fits. Got all the fins in there. Now I'm going to have to hold this one level with my finger because it's a little bit on a kilter. I'm going to try and not block the camera view. And I'm going to run a bead. I've got it slightly angled towards me in the turn. I'm going to run my bead or fillet just like I would if I was using white glue. And then I'm going to immediately touch it with accelerator or kicker. I'm going to watch that run along the length. And I'm going to tape and wipe the excess off really quick before it has a chance to smear up everything. So now that's kind of set in place. I'm going to still hold it with my finger. I'm going to do the other side now. I have to touch up the very tip, but it's not that hard to do. Otherwise, I might end up gluing my finger on by accident. So we've got our glue bead. Still holding with the tip of my finger. Drip of accelerator, about 2 or 3 places. Let it run. Make sure it's touched all the glue. Give it a few seconds to dry, and a quick wipe. And you can see now that that fin is glued in place. It's not strong, It's not designed for flight again. I'm just doing this strictly as something for the kids to look at. Now I'm touching up the spots that I didn't touch with glue so I wouldn't glue my finger to the rocket, which is the other reason for making sure you wipe off all the kickers. You wouldn't be able to even touch it to the rocket. It would glue instantly. It would dry instantly, and that would be not a good thing. And we'll wipe it off. So there we are. I got that all set. Looks pretty good. Fins look like they're on there pretty straight. Mostly straight. It's not flying, so it doesn't have to be perfectly pretty. Kids are never going to really notice something like that. So now we can get to our shock cord getting through the body. And all I did is I just taped it with some tape and stuck it in the motor mount. You have to make sure all your glue is dry so you don't accidentally glue it into your motor mount. Now I'll just feed it back through. Oh, gotta get the right end going through. Try it this way. Drop it straight through. Might be a little easier. You can't see because my desk isn't tall enough. Okay, so now I got it down to the bottom of the rocket, pull through. And we can just bundle it up in our hand. Put a piece of tape on it again. Just to hold it together. Drop it back in the tube. Okay. So we've got all that on there. We're supposed to put the launch lug, and I always make sure that my launch lug is about as center as I could possibly get it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my little measurement, and it says it's supposed to be 8 inches from the tail. If I don't break something here. So we're going to go 8 inches. I'm just going to do a little dot. And this marker actually kind of wipes off, so it's not too much of an issue if I don't get it quite. So there's my inch mark. This is the tricky part, not gluing your fingers to the rocket, but getting your launch lug on straight. So I can trap it there, and then I can tape it in place and glue it, which is how I would normally do it with white glue. I'd actually strap it in place with a launch rod holding it in place, but I'm just going to eyeball it straight. Again, this is never going to fly. Squish in a bead of CA glue. Again, make sure I'm straight. Kick a little bit. And just hit it with the accelerator. And it's there. So now I can wipe off that little bit of excess accelerator I got there and finish it. So a bead here. And remember, the glue doesn't dry all the way through, so if you push hard, you will smear the glue. And we'll do a couple drops again. We'll watch it run all the way down. Looks good. Give it a few seconds to set up all the way. And then just kind of blot it, lightly wipe it. Now I want to make sure there's no accelerator on this other side. We're going to repeat. Run our full length. I'm not pushing down on the launch lug. I don't want to move it by accident. Kicker does dry the glue instantly, but it still can be manipulated if you're not careful. Especially the thicker CA glues. They tend to like to do that. Put a drop there and watch it run down. Made it all the way. Let that sit there. I've actually had the thicker stuff move on me after I hit it with CA. The kicker does not go all the way through instantly. It just hardens the exterior. Just light wipe. Okay. So now that's our nose cone is next. And again, I'm going to switch up to use my thinner CA for this part. I'll just tie a square knot. Keeps the nose cone from rolling around while I'm tying it. Tie a knot. Do a square knot. Nice and tight. And again, this would make it brittle if we were doing a actual rocket. I would not use the CA because it would make the Kevlar slightly brittle. But it instantly set that. That's dry and set where it's at now. So we'll make sure there's no CA hanging around anywhere. Real quick wipe. Trim off that end piece. A lot of times what I'll do is I'll trim off the little bit of a tag I've got frayed, like that. Then I'll take a piece of tape, and I even do this with my high-powered rockets. And I'll put a piece of tape around here. And that'll keep it from moving around. All right, now we got to do our parachute. So we'll stuff this in here. Part of my display, I'm going to be showing different shots of the different Apollo, Mercury, Gemini shots that they did. I'm also going to have the soundtrack of and video of Neil Armstrong landing on the moon in his first steps. Everything from the Eagle has landed to One Small Step for a Man. I'm going to be doing some of the first that the shuttle did. And it's just amazing all the things that you can use to generate interest in our hobby. Last class I taught, I went on to talk to the kids about in 1961, President Kennedy did his speech, and the teacher had already shown the, this is a very large parachute. This is a huge parachute, so I'm going to end up doing this on a table somewhere, I think. But President Kennedy did his speech about how we're going to go to the moon. And the teacher had already shown that to the students. And I went in and I'm talking about how President Kennedy made that speech. And then in that following few years, 1964, I was born, and then on to how the program developed while I was growing up to the landing on the moon, and the fact that my generation built the International Space Station. We built the shuttle, and I challenge them with the phrase of, what will your generation do? Because rocketry is dependent upon the next generation, whether it be a professional or just our hobby. It's dependent upon the next generation to make the improvements. We have to keep them inspired. So I encourage everybody to try and participate with the local schools, STEM projects, science fairs. Anything you can do to generate interest in this hobby might generate our next group of scientists that discover the next means of propulsion or anything like that. So find out what you can do to become involved with students, Boy Scouts, youth clubs, anywhere you can be involved with children, be in children's lives. Be part, if you have children, be a very big part of their lives. Our future lies in our children. Boy, this is a big parachute. So I'm going to finish cutting it. I'm going to get just about everything done, and then we'll actually show you how we string it. So the camera crapped out on me again. You didn't get to see the last things that we did here, and I apologize about that. So the Vapor is complete. You can see we stuck our other decals on: nose cone shoulder, launch slug. We got the motor mount tube, fin tabs, fin. It's got neat little centering ring ones. I'm going to include some pictures up close of some of these. The parachutes together and stuffed in here. So we'll be displaying this at S.T.E.M Fair this week. Try and get some shots of what's going on there, and we'll include it on another video I do later on. Planning on some videos coming up, so we'll get those out here soon. Sorry, I've been kind of absent, a lot of stuff going on, but this was a straightforward, easy build. Really good for educational purposes. Again, it's the Apogee Vapor, Apogee Components Vapor. I like this rocket. Some of the things I would have done if this was going to be a flying model is the fin tabs would have been epoxied to the motor mount tube on the inside where that tab touches. I would have epoxied that. I would have made sure that this motor mount ring would slid up to the butt of the fin tab, and that would have been glued there also for strength. Because this model will never fly, I have no intentions of flying this model. I wasn't worried about adding that sort of strength and rigidity into it. They're fine just the way they are, nice and firm. Great for demonstrations. So keep flying straight and high, and see you on our next video. Hopefully it won't be so long this time.